Hi, my name is John Scali. This is a series of videos where I'm not doing a very good job of it. My expertise was in the preservation and conservation of heritage buildings, and I'll go into that much later. But I hate it when I have so much to say and I can't put it into words properly, and so therefore I'm going to be skipping a lot of details, but I will explain in full details later, so then it'll all make sense. But yeah, this is several reasons I want to put these on. One of them is for Daniel, Laura, Natalie and Melissa. You've been living a lie for many, many years, and the truth does matter, and I'm going to be telling you the unbelievable truth. And if you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. As kids, 96% of us have been conditioned to operate on trust, and we give the benefit of the doubt. I used to say to your mother, the truth is the truth is the truth, because that's what I learned from my mother. And I nearly called it the series It Doesn't Pay to Be Honest. The first of 5 times that I was told you're too honest for your own good, although the last time was a slight twist on it, was when I was working at Target and I was going to see the Annie Sigley show, and I won't go into that now because it sounds like I'm bragging. But the last picture of the public servant, he wasn't the guy, but I was banned from working on government buildings for 10 years, because state government, because I wouldn't pay a bribe to a Chris Georgia at the Hillcrest Hospital. John, I haven't let you down since you gave me that letter in regards to my honesty and integrity. And about a year after you wrote that letter, I know you went to the federal court. Yes, I have seen you since, etc. But this one is from the council. I resigned because I refused to change 2 reports on 2 state government buildings that were severely damaged, and I was told to change reports, and I refused to. I'd rather resign. But my business in terms of restoration, I employed all sorts of people from all types of backgrounds. I even went in 1996, went to Hong Kong and even Shanghai, and I did not advertise whatsoever until I put that brochure together. And the only reason I put that brochure together was because we're going to the OLA synagogue to talk to the Jewish community about it. This guy here comes across as a thing. He was such a con man, but it took me 3 years, 3 or 4 years to find out about it. I even went to the minister, and then I went to the second minister, and this guy, Robert Lawson, he was a QC, and I told them the truth, and they did nothing. They didn't have the brains to do anything, or the guts or anything. I did a psychology test in 2000 when I wanted to buy the kids a job. And in there, yeah, there's 2 really big bits of information, apart from the fact I'm in the top 22% of the population, which was a real surprise. Yeah, I even did a lot of volunteer work, including going over to Port Lincoln after the tragic bushfires of January 2005. And I made a comment, you can see the date on this one is 2008. I made a comment that one, I'll get into the full details later, as I say, Relationships Australia. Oh, the X made 2 massive comments there. But as a kid, I was beaten up every day from about 7.5, only once a week before that. We were chased out by an alcoholic with a double-barreled loaded shotgun. But integrity is the opposite of hypocrisy. Some of the work I've done around the place, even this lady in the middle, and now she's on the left, gave me some really great compliments and naming me. I can't remember how to pronounce it in the Aboriginal Arnhem Land language, but that was my first job after I walked down for the 5th and final time on the Evil X. Now, the reason why it's called Evil Sicko is I had the absolute privilege of looking after 220 people at the mainly at the Royal Adelaide Hospital, and they were from all walks of life. And 2 of the saddest moments, or the saddest days there for me, out of 3, I guess, was looking after foster kids. They're over 18, but they'd been in and out of 100 foster homes, and it was all about them. So, but they asked me about my kids, what are my kids' stories, and how did I treat them, etc. And what they made, the comments is unbelievable. But not only the 220, I even went to the Catholic Church to try to see what's involved in getting an annulment. And even they used the word, sounds like you had an evil marriage. And yeah, if you post me the original marriage documents, the marriage will be annulled. And I know what your mother's going to say because she said it when christened thing and she's crazy. But that's the manipulation she uses. And yeah, actions speak louder than words, absolutely. But they all made, it was unanimous, the 220 people at the end said, you know, you had a pure evil or sicko marriage and evil. Now, I even looked after a couple of guys while this is an American flag here in Australia. And oh boy, one of them in particular I'll never forget. I looked after 3 prostitutes, although one only did it for 3 or 4 years. And I told you the truth, that you's a number 5 out of 10 compared to the ex and her clan being number 1, being the lowest. I would have given them a minus, but yeah. 3 teachers I looked after, and I'll go into those details, and Laurie should not be a teacher according to all of them, and I can't put 2,000 hours of talks into here, but in comments. But I always try to do what was right, always, before I got married, during the marriage, and even after. And I'm estranged from the kids. No one can understand it, not one of the 220 people, and a few others as well, which are in a different category. But what I thought was shyness, turns out it was, now that I understand psychopaths, was actually antisocial. And sadly, they don't go around wearing a thing saying, I'm a psychopath, hello. But the monumental lies of omission before we got married, and that was the start of it. But there was reasons I didn't walk out at the Adelaide airport when she told me about her mother. I said, don't blame her. But anyway, I'm going to go to some audios now just to show the difference.
To it. And the first part is about the people that are out there to scam you, con you, take advantage of you. I call them baiters. And a baiter, it's an acronym that stands for backstabbers, abusers, imposters, takers, exploiters, and reckless. They're reckless with you, they're reckless with us.
This one's a beauty. You got to listen to this one. Yes, she does. Tell lies all the time. And you kids have abandoned me, and I tell you the truth and only the truth. I've never lied to you. I've encouraged you. She's negative and didn't want you to get job. In other words, she sabotaged you. I'll show you some stuff that's been on the news, and also Dr. Phil about getting a job. And I did exactly what these psychologists and psychiatrists have said. And you kids have abandoned me for the negativity and the evil bitch. Oh God, here we go. You can read the stuff. I'll put it on while this audio's on. Yeah, before I go into other details, I actually want to put this in fairly early. Back in early 2006, then friend of mine who had just been through a lot of problems with a woman, he turns around during half a dozen conversations, and I knew he was short-sighted. He asked me to take over a business of a mature patisserie in the Central Market because it had been up for sale for over a year. Anyway, and I pointed some things out to me. He came back a week later, said, "You're right." But one of the conversations he had, he turns around and says, "I reckon that if a woman marries a bloke and she's not in love with him, she's nothing but a slut and a whore." I repeated this 6 to 8 times to your mother, and I knew her answer, and I'll tell you why I knew her answer later. And every time she said, "I agree with that." So just keep that in mind. But I was under the impression that psychopaths were killers. Of course, 4% now I know. It wasn't until early 2012 where a nurse had told me, "You should turn around and read Psychopaths and Mask of Sanity, because sounds like your wife, the bits and pieces she'd heard over the previous years with my patients, that you had an evil wife, psychopath." Oh, this is the monster-in-law from hell. Oh, even one guy, he took his mother-in-law, not by his choice, on the honeymoon. He was one of about 40 that said, "Oh, yeah, I've got monster-in-law from hell, blah, blah, blah." When we started talking later on, I told him about mine. Every one of them said, "Oh, it sounds like yours is a lot worse than mine." But all she knew was fraud and scam and deceit and lies and manipulate. Even the benefit fraud that she embezzled from Centrelink for 5 years. And I told her she accidentally let us slip out 2 years before she got caught. And I said she should tell because she's not entitled to it. She's scamming them. No, they didn't, of course, because the almighty dollar is all they thought about. But the conversation I had the day I was knocking down the pergola, I was only 10 minutes away from the very last bit, and the stool was there for the new one. I never did put the stool up, but it was absolutely unbelievable where she'd stab her own daughter in the back for a few dollars, and I'll go into more exact details later. But she demanded an apology from Joe back in the summer of 91, 92. And oh boy, that was another shock. And that I never did demand Joe to apologise. But it became obvious, and we had laughs about her 13, 14-hour day beauty sleep didn't do her any good. But her intent to marry Joe, to knock on his door, was purely to steal his pension. But she knocked on his door approximately 2 years after her husband died, the first one. He would have still been rolling over in his grave. He would have still been warm in his grave when she goes knocking on his door and demands he marries her. And they kept it secret until I got back at the last 2 minutes, 3 minutes before we landed at Adelaide Airport. And that's why I turned around and sort of said, well, I won't blame her for what her mother did. Boy, how wrong I was, because I broke the mould. I just assumed she would break the mould. We give them the benefit of doubt. But number 4 list on 100 things kids should do back in, that was 2012 paper, was go and read about Dame Roma Mitchell. You kids, you met her. You spent a couple of hours with her. And I knocked her back 4 or 5 times before I finally accepted the invitation to bring you kids in. And that was, I was hoping that you would learn from her positivity and what she achieved. Yeah, because of all the negativity at home. I remember saying to you as we drove out the driveway, but I've got to skip a lot of stuff because, yeah, the evil bitch you just saw a minute ago when the twins were young, 1987. Yeah, the training session, unbelievable. I've got to tell you about that in more details later. But I had promises to keep, even when the doctor told me I had to give up work because my body simply will not cope anymore. And I said, I can't give up. It's not an option. I was paralysed. Luckily, I found a chiropractor after 4 bad ones or 3 bad ones. And 4th one was recommended by a guy who played basketball. He sort of saw me crouched over like that, and he said, sounds like you need a good chiropractor. Anyway, when he told me that this guy does all the basketballers, yeah, let's give it a go. And that was the 2nd chiropractor I went to. I love you kids even if you don't love me back. That's why I turned around and I spent the rest of the thing paying $1 million each according to that. There's $4 million. Even if it was $3 million for the 4 years, get a discount for bulk or whatever. But having said that, I also paid for your mother's gambling, for your devil grandmother accommodation, her transport. I paid for frickin' everything, and it was out of my blood, sweat and tears and my aches and pains. And you kids, you think you've had it tough. I'll give you a little bit insight to mine, but you've had holidays. You had about 25 holidays of about a week or 10 days at a time, and you had another 8 or 9 which were long weekends. Yeah, you had houseboat holidays and Queensland holidays and everything. I'll go into those details later. But when your auntie was here, not when your devil auntie, the one where the photo with the twins were in there, I realised how cheap the whole clan were. It was unfrickin' believable. Yeah, this is one thing I didn't know about Psychopaths. And having said that, with the promiscuity, who knows if you're my kids? Certainly, I'll explain why your mother is, by her own admission, not my words, her own admission, she's a big slut. So who knows if you're my kids? Yeah, I threw up on our 30th anniversary when she turns around and used those words, I love you. And I knew it was all bullshit, and I was already planning on walking out. That's why I told her I'm going to take audios so she can hear them back. No, I didn't have time to, I couldn't be bothered letting her hear them back, all the lies and manipulation that she was doing and the stupidity. But I told her, you don't have a heart when I finally walked out. You've only got to pump, now that I know you like your mother, you don't have a heart. You've only got a pump, mechanical pump. And you don't even have blood in your veins. You've got a mixture of poison and shit, and I'll tell you why later. But she went and told people that I was supposed to have said, talk about manipulation, that I was going to rip her mother's heart out. How could I if she doesn't, well, frickin' have a heart? She's only got a mechanical pump. And this Hoss, yeah, is my biological brother. Hoss stands for heap of shit. And I'll tell you why. He's the reason I didn't walk out at the bloody Adelaide airport when we come back from our honeymoon, because I used to say for the previous year or two, don't blame me for what he did. Now, you know, I had 2 real brothers. One was Ray B, I won't go into his name, and Hans was the other one, but they've both passed away, and not to confuse Hans with another 2 Hans I might mention somewhere along the line. But he never wasted any energy with his kids either. Both your mother and Hoss and the devil, yeah, they lied by omission. He never told his wife that he went bankrupt, like your mother never told me about the devil going knocking on a door like a cheap slut to marry the guy next door to steal his pension. Of course, they couldn't tell him he was going to steal his pension. It was just other excuses. And it took a few years later. And then when I had a talk with Joe later, oh boy, we had some laughs. But this arsehole here, how many times has he gone broke? 11. And look at the different business cards come up. I'll tell you the incident where he grabbed my hand and made me shake it. I kept pulling my hand away, and he grabbed my right hand with both hands and shook it. This was on a Friday afternoon, just before I started work for the council when they offered me the job. And he was trying to convince me to think. On a Friday afternoon, he shakes my hand. On a Monday morning, oh, what a frickin' joke. I'll tell you about it later. And look at this, he sends money by Western Union or whoever it is there to the Philippines, to this prostitute, and yet he wouldn't spend $3 on a bloody washer in his mum's toilet, and she had to close the tap, and I'll tell you the full details later. But psychopaths, I've learned, have got low intellect. It's a psychopath trait. And all they think about is 3 things. Me, 2, me, and 3. Oh, and look at this business card. The real estate wealth creator. He doesn't even own a frickin' house, and he's 67 almost. Doesn't even own a house, but he's going to be a wealth creator for everybody else. And look at the previous ones, tax savior, property savior. Oh, God, he couldn't even save himself. Couldn't even organise a piss up in a brewery. In fact, with the 5 clan and Hoss, they couldn't even bloody do it. Yeah, my working life started at bloody 5 years of age, and the abuse I started 5 years of age as well by an alcoholic dad. And I decided the time was right to do the right thing. And I went to protect my mother from about 7.5. And instead of getting a weekly beating, I got it daily, all because I went to protect my mother. What are you doing for others? Well, I've got a whole list of things. Compared to your mother, you've got a blank page there. I was determined through the beatings and everything else that I was going to be the world's best dad. I got the courage to do things. I got the determination. And you never know how strong you are until you're stronger, and is the only choice you have. Yeah, I worked not only through the day, but at night we used to do what's called sticks. And yeah, at 12 I did a milk round to try to buy myself my first push bike, not given everything like you were and even like Hoss. And my mother taught me the family is the most important thing. And I'll go back to Jamie Oliver, what he said. He described my mother to a T when he went through our region on a trip. It was on TV about 2002, 2004, somewhere around there. But yeah, I'll finish this one and start off. Number 2 will be the same, just dribs and drabs, jumping all over the place.